Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wisdom from North, another conversation. My name is Jannike, and I'm now here at Bristol in Oslo, speaking English, since I'm having an American guest on the show, and his name is Richard Dolan, and he is a UFO investigator, and he's considered by the students of the UFO subject to be one of the preeminent historian on the subject. So I'm really excited about doing this interview with you, and thank you so much for accepting.
Jannike, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here talking with you.
Great. And I went to your lecture last night because Richard had a lecture at Håndverkeren, and it was really coincidental how I came across this, that you were going to have a lecture, and I went and I asked for an interview and you said yes, and now we're here.
That's right.
So I'm very excited. And so you've been studying this for about 20 years?
Yes, yeah.
And so you have a lot of, you know a lot about the subject. And let's start at just, the big question. Are we being visited by beings from outer space? And if yes, where are they? Are they hovering about us, or are they among us?
Well, I do believe that we can say visited. I don't know if these beings are from outer space or if they're from Earth or what they are or where they're from. 20 years ago when I started researching this, I was a lot more conservative about what I thought might be the case. And I feel like I fell into the topic at that time and became really obsessed with the question, not even were UFOs real, but were they part of our world history through military documents and things like this. Well, I discovered they are part of our history. I guess here's what I can say we know for sure. We know that there is a phenomenon of something, objects, at least at times, these are definitely objects, that the world militaries, I study mostly the US, but also other militaries, have been interested in, have at times tried to intercept, and have usually failed, as far as we can tell. So there's something going on, and it's important, and it's secret. That begs the question, who are these other beings? All through the early history of this in the 1940s in particular, analysts asked that question, who are these? Are they Russian? That was a big question because it was the Cold War and everything. But it doesn't look like these were Russian. Another question is, were these American secret projects? And, that's a tricky question, but in my view, the answer is probably no, for the most part. And so we're left with what? Are we beings from outer space? Well, this is a pretty logical conclusion. There's a lot of life out in the universe. We're not that far ourselves from developing really incredible capabilities and probably being able to go out there ourselves. So that's a possibility, but there's a lot of strangeness to UFOs that makes some people wonder if it's even stranger than outer space. Are there entities that have the ability to come in and out of our reality, so to speak? Do they just live here? Maybe they once were from outer space, but maybe now they're here all the time. I think that that's actually the case. I think that whoever these beings are, they've been here a long time. They have a way, however it is, of them living here. You ask where they are. Well, I think some of them, if I were an alien and I wanted to live on Earth and I didn't want any hassles, I might create a secure environment for myself, maybe underground. If I had the technology, I had the energy, I could create a very nice space in a secure environment under the ground. No one would bother me. Even inside a mountain, under the ocean floor. We have technology ourselves, we've had it for 50 years, to be able to go deep under the ground and under the ocean seabed. We have tunnels that go under the ocean floor already. It's no big problem at all. We can extract oxygen from the water. Have that capability for many years. So I think they would be able to. But do some of them even live in our society? I'll say this. In my own research privately, I've interviewed a number of people who have had encounters with completely human-looking beings, but who they don't seem like you and me.
Yeah, you told a couple of stories last night.
Yeah, and they're crazy, you know, but I believe these stories. I spoke to a woman and her husband, who both are in the U.S. in a small town in western Pennsylvania. It's very rural there. She was talking about being a teenager in the 1960s, going to church with her mother in a tiny little village where everybody knew each other, and especially in church. And in front of her were these two new people, beautiful, gorgeous, blonde male and female, with clothing that was incredible, perfectly blue, fine blue clothing that just looked, wow, like who are these people? And she was a teenager. She was focused on them, thinking they're amazing. And she was shocked that no one else in the church was looking at these two people, but she was fixated on them. And then she said to me that she heard them in her mind, and she heard them thinking to each other, and their thoughts were, are these people paying attention to us? Looks like we're doing a good job at fitting in, and so on. And then she heard the woman think to the man, she hears us. And that's when she became frightened. At the end of the Mass, those two got up and they left immediately. She pressed through the crowd and followed them and ran out of the church. She saw them going up a hill. She ran, they go down the hill, and when she got up to the top, she saw them walking very quickly through a grassy clearing towards some woods. And she ran after them, and then she stopped because she saw this very tall figure at the clearing of the woods. He was wearing black, very, very tall, black hat, scary looking. That frightened her, and she watched this beautiful couple, blonde couple in blue clothing, like yourself.
I love blue.
Makes me wonder.
One or two.
She saw them walk behind this figure into the woods, and then that figure turned around and went into the woods also. And, you know, what was that? What was that? That was crazy. I had another conversation with a retired Air Force colonel and his wife, almost exactly the same type of story, but in a Las Vegas hotel, where they encountered two beautiful blonde, male-female, telepathic, and in this case, the blonde woman got into the head of this Air Force colonel and said to him, none of your business, you have no need to watch this, just go about your way. And once again, you know, this colonel doesn't know this woman that I spoke to. Where are these stories coming from, I wonder? And other researchers as well have encountered stories of human-looking beings who, you know, would fit into our society, but they don't seem like us.
So why are they here, and why don't they want to communicate with us, or do they want to communicate with us, but we're not open for it?
Well, that's a good question. You know, again, I don't know. I don't know all of these answers. My training is as a historian, and what I like to do the best is review documents and I can confirm what I know. What I know is that there's something important going on. The whys, that I don't always know all of the answers, but we can speculate. Why don't they communicate with us? Well, what if you and I were to travel to some natural wildlife preserve, and we were to observe a band of gorillas in the wild? We might not, you know, would we decide to walk up to some of them and say, oh, hi, we're members of the local human band here. We'd like to establish diplomatic relations with you. Well, maybe not, because we wouldn't think of them like that. And I suspect that some of these other beings might look at us this way. They might not consider us at their level, or even if they respect our capabilities, they still might not have an easy way to communicate with us. And also, I've wondered about this. What if you and I, were to time travel back a mere 1,000 years into the human past, to some medieval town or village? Ask yourself, what really would you be able to tell those people about who you are, about your society, without their heads just going pop? There's only so much you could tell them. Could you tell them that the world is round? Maybe. Could you tell them that the earth travels around the sun? No, probably not. Could you tell them that, well, the continents actually move around the Earth and we've got these things called tectonic plates? No. Could you talk about microbes and bacteria? No. Or all of the other things that we know about. You really wouldn't be able to, because it would be too much. It would be too much for them. And I think similarly, and that's if we have their best interest in mind. So if they are here, they're observing us, my guess is that they know a lot of things that we as a society may not, most of us, be ready for.
But still, they have a lot to teach us, I think, since they are able to come all the way here. Hopefully, they have a lot to teach us. And I'm wondering about crop circles. Do you think that these things are related?
Yes, actually, I do. In my talk last night, I didn't have a lot to say about crop circles except in the questions afterward. I find crop circles quite fascinating. Now, there are some human groups that do make good crop circles. We have to remember, people used to say, oh yeah, well, all the ones that people make are not that good. It's not true. Some of them are very good. So we have to be careful in looking at them. Having said that, some of these circles, in particular, some from this last year, 2012, I have to say, are almost really are at the level of genius. I mean, incredible precision and beauty and intricacy. I don't see humans having done this. And historically, some of these circles do seem to have messages encoded in them. My opinion is that the best of these circles are made by other intelligences, and then they are a way to give messages to us, to kind of wake us up.
So, do we have contact, or do the government have contact with these beings? And if they do, why don't we know about it?
Well, yes. I think I'm going to give you my opinion, and my opinion is yes, that there has been some type of contact. But ask yourself this. Let's rewind our clock back to the 1940s and pretend that you were the U.S. president at that time. So you're the man in charge, the guy with the plan. And your top generals and people come up to you and say, sir, we have recovered technology that does not originate from our civilization. And you just go, wow, that's a big thing to handle, isn't it? What would you do with that information? Would you tell the world? Well, maybe you might have an instinct to tell the world, but then you'd think about it. Because if you told the world, then it becomes very difficult not to share this technology with the rest of the world. Remember, there's a Cold War, there's the big bad Soviets and Joseph Stalin, and there's other countries, and maybe you don't want them to have access to this yet. And also, you wouldn't know who these other beings are. And keep in mind that the world had just finished this titanic struggle of World War II, where millions of people were homeless, millions more on the verge of starvation. The whole world was just like this, lying on its back, trying to get back on its feet. And so now you've got this problem dumped into your lap. No, I think what you'd want to do is quietly figure it out first and decide what you're going to do. That might be a reasonable course of action. The problem, though, is that with any great secret, it develops its own momentum, its own bureaucracy, its own profitability. This is what happens. It's part of what I call the structure of secrecy. And this is exactly what happened with the UFO secret. So it's gone into very deep, we'll say clandestine roots. Much of this has become privatized, which is very much along the lines of much of the U.S. defense establishment. It's become privatized. It's not all situation anymore of, the president at the top, and he runs the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they control the departments of the military. No, not really. We've got compartments, and compartments within compartments within compartments, and no one has a handle on this. There have been only a few studies that have tried to understand just how deep U.S. military secrecy goes, and the fact is no one has got a handle on this. It's a system that has sprawled out of control, and much of it has become privatized. So within that whole empire of secrecy, the UFO problem also resides within one compartment. And so it's a secret that's become very profitable too. just like most secrets can become profitable. With the UFO secret, if you've got this secret technology that you're able to study, well, at a certain point, that can be a nice moneymaker, I think.
So are somebody using this technology without us knowing about it, maybe?
Well, this has been a theory that I've been thinking about for a few years. What we do know within the classified world is that they have a history of having technology ahead of the rest of us. This much is known. Last night I mentioned a story of a scientist that I know who worked for the National Security Agency back in the 1960s, the early 1960s, and described their computing capabilities then. This was a computing clock speed that the rest of the world didn't match until about 35 years later, until around the year 2000. So the NSA is way ahead of us. So now let's bring in presumed UFO technology. I do believe that there has been acquisition of this technology. If you've had opportunities to study this secretly for years and years with your teams of genius-level scientists, do we think that they might have some nice ideas every once in a while? Yes, I do. Now, the question is, what would those ideas be? I don't know. We can speculate. Improvements to integrated circuits, lasers, fiber optics, superconductivity. Yes, I think probably. More? Maybe more. Maybe more like, as in, have they developed what we would call field propulsion? That is, let's say, anti-gravity. This is not science fiction. The ability to create a repulsive force field is legitimate scientific inquiry. And we don't have it officially in this world today. But we really might want to ask, has this been developed in the clandestine world? I personally think the answer is yes, and that this classified world has gone so far ahead of us in some ways in their technology that we almost might consider them a separate civilization, one that has broken away from our own. I use the term a breakaway civilization to describe them. And it's not like that they all live on Mars or they all live under the ground, although they might have large underground facilities. But rather, because I think they probably live here on Earth, they have family, and they have their mothers and fathers and cousins and sisters and brothers, but that they have a mental world that is so different. They really can't share with us. They're living in a different reality much of the time, especially when they're at work.
Wow. Will there be a day of disclosure, and is it near?
I do believe that there will be a disclosure of this. That doesn't mean that it will be that the president of the U.S. or of the EU or some other, or the United Nations, I don't believe that they're just going openly to say, okay, yes, everyone, we're going to tell you now what's been going on, and there is a UFO phenomenon, and it's real, and other beings are here. They won't ever do that voluntarily. Never, never, never. I look at disclosure as a paradox. It's impossible, but it is inevitable. It's impossible because those groups that really have this secret, they have no incentive ever for giving it up. They have too much to lose, as I see it. On the other hand, they're not the only factor in the secrecy equation. There's us. There's you. You're doing an interview. You do interviews and you're getting the word out. And there are many other people out there. We have a global connectivity now that even 10 years ago I don't think we could have imagined it. Not much less 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Our world is moving so fast. So where are we going to be in another 10 years, technologically, in our global consciousness, in our ability to have a global conversation, to share information, and to get that information out? Who knows? We're at a point where your computer and my computer, at some point in the near future, will be able to talk to us. I mean, really talk to us. And maybe sound smarter than us, and they won't need coffee to wake up in the morning like I just did, and they won't need sleep. They'll just go. So we're moving into a world that's going to be very different. And in that world, I ask myself, will we really be stuck at the same point in getting this truth out that we are today? And I think no. There'll be breakthroughs. In the last 10 years, we've had the development of WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks didn't exist 10 years ago because it couldn't exist 10 years ago because we didn't have the global technological infrastructure. But now we have that infrastructure, and guess what? There it is. And there are other groups too, just like it. So their secrets are going to be coming out. Everyone's carrying smartphones now with some really great capabilities. Well, maybe one day they'll start having other capabilities. Infrared, night vision. And actually, you go on YouTube and there are some fantastic UFO videos. The problem with videos, of course, is that they can be faked. We need authentication and so forth. But I think this is all in time. It's going to happen. There's going to be a day when there's going to be a mass sighting. You'll have 15, 20, 30, 100 people with their cameras, and they're going to get it. It'll go up.
And then there are a lot of people talking about that they have experiences with this.
Yes, that's right. This is another part. We talk about UFOs, unidentified flying objects. But, really that's not, in a lot of ways, that's really not the most accurate term, is it? Because a lot of the action isn't up in the sky, it's down on the ground. Like that story I was telling you about, that woman in church and the Air Force colonel. There's something going on the ground here. And it's not all about objects flying through the air. People are having experiences. I'm sure you've spoken to many. I've spoken to quite a few. And it's important because whatever's happening to some of these people, you get a wide range of experiences. Some of them are very positive. Some of them are traumatic. And the people who've had traumatic experiences, frightening experiences, they have a very difficult time talking about this publicly. Who do you talk to if you think you've been abducted by aliens? I mean, really. There's not many people you can just go to. And yet I think it's widespread. Something is happening to certain people. And on the other hand, there are other people who are openly, intentionally seeking contact with these other intelligences, other beings, and they claim to have been having telepathic contact. One thing I can say very confidently is that these other entities are intensely telepathic. Whether they're, the beautiful supermodel aliens that I was talking about earlier, or the Greys, the short, 1 meter tall beings who, with the big black eyes, all of the accounts of them are also indicating that they can get into our heads. So there's the issue of contact. It's very important. There's something happening. They find us to be of interest in some important way. Humanity is of interest to them.
And then I have to ask about Hessdal, because we have this place in Norway that's called Hessdal, where there is a lot of activity, UFO activity, and I wonder why there. Is it some sort of portal there? Do you know anything about that?
Oh yeah, I've looked into Hessdal quite a bit as well. It's been for 30 years the scene of incomprehensible activity. We don't even really know if what people are seeing there are objects. Sometimes they seem to be objects. Sometimes they seem to be intelligent light phenomenon. What are these things? Hessdal is as remote as one could wish. I mean, it is out there. And particularly in the early 1980s, it was a lot more remote even than it is now, but it's still remote. There's not a lot of people who live out there. And you've had a phenomenon, and it continues, of things. What do we call these things, They've been detected electronically. They've been detected on radar and other electronic means. They've been seen visually. They've been photographed. So yes, I wondered, is there an underground facility? Is there a large underground base? Again, the technology to go deep underground. We humans have had this capability for a long time. So if there are other entities that are even more technologically advanced, I have to wonder. Or, even there are underground caves. There's all natural types of underground hollowed out areas. It really doesn't have to be all that impossible to have a secure environment. And the question is, what is it that they would be doing? Well, it might not be a display for ourselves. It might just be an effect of whatever it is that they are doing in their own society. And we just happen to be bumping into it now because were spreading out over the globe like little termites eating everything up. So now we've bumped into them in Hessdal. They could be in many other places doing similar things. But I don't know what this is. It's an important phenomenon in large part for two reasons, really more than that. But one, because it's continued for years and years, and also because it's been subject to a lot of scientific study. So we've had a lot of opportunity to observe it, and there's been some good data recorded. And it's also interesting because it doesn't conform to a single idea of what this phenomenon is. We talk about UFOs, but again, sometimes what you get at Hessdal is it doesn't seem to be flying objects. It's a phenomenon of some sort, but it's intelligent. So we really need to open our minds when we think about this topic. I've just finished writing a draft of a new book, which I call UFOs for the 21st Century Mind. And one of the things that is important to me to understand is this is a topic that sometimes can seem, crazy as it sounds, old-fashioned. You think of the flying saucers of the 1950s, and does anyone really care anymore? Well, what I find is that this is a far more complex phenomenon than just, spacemen from another planet in their metal spaceships zipping around Earth, surveillance, of Earth. No, I think it's a lot more complicated than that. And so we want to open our minds up and look at some of these other hypotheses and realities that are going on.
I have to ask you, how did you come across this? Why did you start to investigate this? Because you had an academic background, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 20 years ago, I was living a different world, man. I was working on a PhD in Cold War history at the University of Rochester in the United States. I was good at what I did. I was a very motivated academic student, graduate student, and I enjoyed what I did, too. And in that environment, nobody studies UFOs or flying saucers. My God, they don't do that.
You're brave.
Absolutely. Well, I've always been a little different, I'll tell you. And, but I didn't, it's not like I planned to get into this topic. But about 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, I was in a bookstore, just wandering around, and I saw a UFO book on the shelf. It was a book by a UK ufologist named Timothy Good, who's very well known in this field. And the book was called Above Top Secret, and it was the subtitle that really got my attention. The subtitle was The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I remembered flipping through the book, and what really got my attention were that I recognized many of the names that he had in his book, names from my own academic research. But what was jarring, what was unsettling to me, was that he was writing about some of these individuals in a context completely different than how I had been studying them. And it was as if there's two realities here. There's the academic, official reality, and then there's this other unofficial reality. And the question was, A, is this true? Is there any truth to this? Because everyone has heard of claims of UFO cover-up. Everyone in the world has heard of allegations that there's a UFO cover-up. But here it was staring me in the face. So, and then also, I wanted to know that if there's any truth to this, then why had I never read about this in any academic history book ever? Because if there were 3-star and 4-star American generals and CIA directors who had an interest in UFOs, if that were true, even if it were a mistake, I wanted to know, why would I not read about that? How could that not be interesting? In what dimension of reality is that not fascinating? That's totally fascinating in the history of the Cold War and all of this. So I wanted to know. Simple question. Not were UFOs real? I wasn't there yet. I was a lot more conservative. I just wanted to know, is this part of my country's history? Is this part of the world's history? Were high-level people into this? And if they were, why were they interested? Did they ever stop being interested? In all of these other questions. So that sucked me in like a vacuum. There I go. And I thought, well, I'll look into this for a few months. That was really my original thinking. This was 1993, 94. I thought, I'll explore this, I'll settle this for myself. And this is the way I am. I get obsessed over things. I'm, fanatical. I'll get up all the books I can. I'll read everything, and I'll really absorb it, and then I'll be done. But with UFOs, I couldn't be done because I realized there's something here. And then that led to more questions and more questions. And
you
then
went down the rabbit hole.
Down that rabbit hole, indeed. And, in the movie The Matrix, one of my favorite movies, a lot of people love that one. So you have the red pill and the blue pill. You have a choice to take. You could take the blue pill and your reality continues just as it always had. You take that red pill and everything changes. So I wish it were that easy. If I could just take one damn red pill and be done with it, man, that would be the best. But it's not that easy. So you take the red pill, you realize that this is a whole reality. The first year of studying UFOs for me, I spent many, many nights lying awake in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to understand my reality. If this was true, then what does that say about the history of my country's politics? A simple question like, how do I look differently now at the presidency of John F. Kennedy, for one example out of many? Did he know about this? Would he have known? And on and on and on. But if it were just one red pill, that would be great. But it doesn't work like that. It's like you rip away one layer of reality, one layer of illusion. There you go. And you see clearly for a little while. But then you go further into this topic and you see that there's more strangeness and more questions. And then you rip away another layer of illusion.
We talk about, Per Gynt talks about the onion that you keep taking.
Yes, exactly. It is like an onion with layer upon layer. And I don't know how many layers I've gone through at this point. What's funny is, I can't talk to people when I fly. I fly a lot. And I don't really know how to talk to, because everyone on an airplane, they've got their little Excel spreadsheets and they're doing their little business stuff. And inevitably, they'll say to me, "Oh, so what do you do?" Yeah, right. And I think, how do I get into that one? So
I'm an historian.
Well, I'm not afraid to talk about UFOs ever. But the thing is, I think I've gotten to a point now where my reality, my mental world is, it's very far removed from that of my neighbors or just ordinary people. And I find that when I talk about this topic publicly also, I have to be aware that people are at very different stages along this. There are people who are just starting out, and their reality, they haven't even taken the first red pill. So they're at a certain place in all of this. And then there are people who've gone much further along, and there are people who've gone much further along than I have gone. So there's a spectrum of belief and a spectrum of understanding with this topic that's very complex.
I just have to ask you, have you had any experiences with extraterrestrials, or have you seen flying?
Well, I have seen a few things that are very inexplicable, and I've, personally wondered, have I had experiences? But the thing is, I don't recall a direct experience. I had two really interesting UFO sightings with my family, and one occasion with my son, who at the time was a little boy. He was 3 years old. Now he's 16. So I was with him in front of my house in the middle of a beautiful blue afternoon, no clouds in the sky. I happen to live very close to an airport, so I see airplanes all the time. So I was walking with him, holding his hand, and this bright thing in the sky got my attention. So I stopped and I turned. I was right in front of my house, and I was looking at this bright object, and I thought, that airplane has more reflections, has more reflectivity than I have ever seen in my life. And it's reflecting right in my eyes. I thought, wow, that's a little odd. So what does it look like? Because I couldn't see a shape. All I saw was this bright light. So I said to myself, I'm just going to stand here and wait until I see it, because I want to see what this thing is. So I'm standing there, and it's not resolving into a shape at all. And it's moving oddly. It's moving very slow. But I thought, well, maybe that's an illusion. Maybe it's just coming like toward me. Things can fool us. So I'm watching it. Meanwhile, my poor son, he's 3 at the time. He had no idea what I'm doing and why his father has just turned into this statue on a sidewalk. So I hear him calling me. He's saying, "Daddy, what are you doing? What?" And he's starting to get upset. And I thought, and here's where it got strange. I thought a very illogical thought, which was, if I turn away from this, I'll never see it again. And that thought made no sense because there is no place in the sky for this thing to go. Even if it were to lose the reflection, it wasn't so high up that I wouldn't be able to see it. But I thought, you have to look at this. You cannot look away. This is something special. But my poor son was becoming hysterical, so I had to turn to him. So I actually pointed with my finger to hold its place in the sky. For 1 second, I turned to my son. 1 second. I turned back, and of course, that thing was gone.
Oh, my goodness.
I spent the next 5 minutes scanning the sky for it. And I thought, well, what's this? Is someone just tapping me on the shoulder? Was this for me? Like, hello, Richard. Now that you're finishing your first book, here. Because I was just about finished with my first book.
It's true.
I don't know. There's a long history of UFO witnesses feeling that these objects have somehow communicated with them. And I have to wonder that this may have happened to myself. But that was my sighting. I mean, that's not nearly as dramatic as many, many, many other.
But did your son see it?
No, he did not see it on that occasion. He later, as he got older, my son is a brilliant young man now. As he got older, he had one, I think, a very interesting sighting with his mother, with my wife. They were inside a coffee shop, and they looked out and saw a bizarre object in the night sky that they knew was not a reflection. They tested and everything. It was very, very strange. I wasn't with them for that. And then I was with my wife and my daughter on another occasion just a few years ago. My daughter was about 8 years old. We were walking our family dog. At night, it was a nice August evening, late July, just almost August, and very thin layer of clouds in the sky. And me being Mr. UFO, I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we looked up and saw a UFO? So I looked up and my daughter looked up, and sure enough, we saw this fast object zooming across the sky. No airplane could move this fast. Now it might have been a meteorite, but the crazy thing is that it went into a very thin patch of cloud, and it never came out. So again, it might have been just a neat coincidence that it was a meteorite that burned out as it went by a cloud, but I don't know. My daughter saw it. She actually saw it better than I did. She had better eyesight. I saw a white light. She saw a white light with some colors. But what was it? Don't know. She got scared. I had to calm her down.
Yeah, I mean, it is a scary feeling. Like, I've been interested in this subject for a long time. But then again, when you learn more about it, you get a little bit afraid as well. So I was going to ask you, do you have any advice on how to cope with this? Cope with all this information?
Well, it's hard. I've spent my whole adult life, I've thrown myself onto the altar of this field, basically. I'm a sacrificial victim, and I still haven't figured it all out. And I spend a lot of time thinking about it. For people who are interested, I can make a promise to them, which is that there is, I haven't found a topic that is more mind-opening than the study of UFOs, because it really rewards effort. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it. But you have to be brave. I really mean this. You have to be willing to discard the illusions that you grew up with. You must be. And think about it logically. Anyone who really wants to go through psychological growth or spiritual growth, well, guess what? You have to go through effort. And you have to strip away the illusions and the lies that you've lived with for years. That's the only way we grow. And studying UFOs is a very significant avenue one can take toward personal growth, because you do strip away illusion. Now, the problem with it is that the fact is, not everyone wants to be Superman. Not everyone really does want to save the world, and not everyone wants to challenge themselves. So you can study this as a dilettante and think, oh yeah, UFOs are fun. It's a fun little topic. I'll look at it a little bit. But the fact is that it's more than just a fun little topic. It's actually a profound topic that has global significance and deep internal significance as well when you explore it. So you have to be prepared to strip away a lot of layers of illusion. And I don't think that there's a limit as to how far you can go. I haven't found it yet myself. You've got to be strong, just like with any topic that challenges your notions of reality. Because the fact is, look, most of us, we get to a certain age in life, and we really don't want to reinvent our worldview. We've got it figured out, we think. You get to a certain age, usually 30. People, they turn 30, they realize, oh, shit, I'm going to die one day. I better get my act together, and let's act like a grown-up, and let's get a nice adult worldview here. And then really, unfortunately, what they do is they spend the rest of their lives filling in the blanks of what they think they already know. But the fact is, we haven't got it all figured out when we're 30, or when we're 40, or when we're 50. And to challenge ourselves in understanding the nature of reality, that's hard work, and it's not always easy. But as I say, it rewards effort. It's worth it.
Wow. Thank you so much for this interview. I'm so honored and so happy that you accepted to do this. This was really informative and really exciting news. And where can we, do you have a website that we can go into?
Yes, I do. It's keyholepublishing.com. Just like looking through a keyhole, keyholepublishing.com. That's my site. You can go there. I've got lots of articles. I've got YouTube videos. You can read about books I've written. And upcoming events and all of that.
Great. Thank you so much, and good luck with your research.
Oh, it was my pleasure talking with you. I really enjoyed it.
And thank you for watching, guys. Keep looking for new videos at wisdomfromnorth.com. Goodbye.